My dear listener, today I want to speak with you, not as a lecturer, but as a fellow traveler in the intricate world of human relations. What you're about to hear isn't theory, it isn't abstract, it's the product of observing people, of making mistakes, and learning over decades what truly moves the heart and mind. Let's begin with a truth so fundamental that ignoring it can shatter our chances of success in life, both professionally and personally. It's this: if you want to gather honey, don't kick over the beehive. Now, let me take you back in time to May 7th, 1931. New York City was a boiling cauldron of tension. After weeks of relentless searching, the city's most notorious fugitive, Francis Two Gun Crowley, had finally been cornered. 150 policemen surrounded his sweetheart's apartment on West End Avenue. The sound of gunfire echoed through one of the city's finest neighborhoods. It was a scene of chaos, machine guns mounted on rooftops, bullets flying, crowds gasping, and there he was, Crowley, crouched behind an armchair, firing desperately, defiantly. But what was he thinking? As the police closed in, he penned a letter, his blood staining the paper, claiming, "Under my coat is a weary heart, but a kind one that would do nobody any harm." Think about that for a moment. This man had just gunned down a police officer in cold blood, then fired a final shot into the officer's body. And yet he saw himself as a misunderstood soul, a victim. Was this an isolated case? Take Al Capone, public enemy number one. He once said, "I've spent the best years of my life giving people the lighter pleasures, helping them have a good time, and all I get is abuse." Abuse! Can you imagine? The man who flooded the streets with violence believed he was a benefactor. Even Dutch Schultz, another infamous gangster, thought of himself as a public servant, and these weren't rare exceptions. I once exchanged letters with Louis Laws, the former warden of Sing Sing prison. He told me something extraordinary. Few of the criminals in Sing Sing regard themselves as bad men. Why? Because they justify their actions. They rationalize. They find a way, any way, to excuse their behavior to themselves. And now, my friend, let me bring that truth home. If such hardened criminals don't blame themselves, what about the everyday people you and I interact with? Your coworker, your spouse, your neighbor. Do you think they'll accept your criticism without resistance? Number 99 times out of 100, people don't criticize themselves. They defend. They justify. They protect their pride. That's why criticism doesn't work. It's not just ineffective, it's dangerous. It wounds pride. It sparks resentment. It can poison relationships and destroy morale. You may be right in your judgment, but you'll be wrong in your approach. This isn't just philosophy, it's psychology. B.F. Skinner, the famed behavioral scientist, proved that animals and humans learn far more from reward than punishment. We crave approval and we fear condemnation. Let me give you a real-world example. George B. Johnston, a safety coordinator from Oklahoma, used to scold workers who didn't wear hard hats. It never worked. They'd comply while he watched, then toss the hats the moment he left. So he changed his method. He asked questions kindly, showed concern, and explained the reason behind the rule. What happened? Compliance without resentment, just by replacing criticism with understanding. And history backs this up. Think of Theodore Roosevelt and President Taft. Roosevelt, frustrated by Taft's conservatism, criticized him bitterly, split the Republican Party, and all but handed the White House to Woodrow Wilson. But did Taft admit fault? He said with tears in his eyes, "I don't see how I could have done any differently from what I have." Roosevelt's fierce criticism didn't change Taft's mind. It only made him dig in deeper, just as your criticism might do to your employees, your spouse, or your children. Even in government, even in scandal, the pattern repeats. Remember the Teapot Dome scandal? Secretary of the Interior Albert B. Fall handed over government oil reserves to his friend without bidding, took a loan of $100,000 and sent in the Marines to drive off competitors. The fallout was national disgrace, prison time, and the collapse of a presidency. But I ask you, did Fall admit guilt, or did he justify his actions, believing in his mind that he had done what was necessary? And so, my friends, we come to a powerful truth, one that is so often overlooked in our rush to judge and criticize those around us. We all want to improve the world, don't we? We want better relationships, more harmony, greater understanding in our homes, in our offices, in our communities. But the true secret, the first step in any real change, begins not with others, but with ourselves. Yes, it's tempting to want to reshape those around us, to fix that colleague who's inefficient, to correct the friend who always speaks too loudly, to mold our children, our spouses, our employees into what we think they ought to be. But ask yourself this: how often has criticism ever truly worked? How many times has a reprimand inspired transformation? Not often, I would wager. Instead, more often than not, criticism plants the seed of resistance. It hardens hearts, it builds walls. And if you're truly honest with yourself, you'll realize something important. When you are criticized, what happens? You get defensive, you explain, you justify. Just like Two Gun Crowley, just like Al Capone, just like President Taft, Albert Fall, and even the generals in Lincoln's day. You see, human nature doesn't change. We all thirst for approval, and we all dread condemnation. That's not weakness, that's humanity. So what do? We begin with empathy. We start with understanding. We learn to see through the other person's eyes. Let me ask you, have you ever tried to sincerely listen to someone you were about to criticize? Not just hear them, but really listen, to pause and ask, what's going on in their world? Why might they be acting this way? That single act, listening, can work wonders. It disarms hostility. It opens the door to trust. It's what Lincoln did. It's what every great leader in history has learned, the gentle power of restraint. And the results? Oh, they are profound. I remember the story of a man who came to one of my courses years ago. He was a manager of a small department, and he struggled with one of his employees who was always late. Day after day, the same frustration. He tried warnings. He tried written notices. Nothing worked. Finally, he changed his approach. Instead of reprimanding, he asked the employee to sit down. No scolding, just a question. Is everything all right? I've noticed you've been coming in late. I'd like to understand if something is making things difficult for you. To his surprise, the employee opened up. He had been caring for his mother, who had recently suffered a stroke. His mornings were filled with helping her dress, eat, and get to her nurse. The manager listened. He really listened, and together they found a schedule that worked better for both of them. No punishment, no resentment, just understanding. That, my friends, is the kind of influence that lasts. You see, people are not creatures of logic. They are creatures of emotion, pride, and vanity. And if we wish to win them to our way of thinking, we must appeal to the heart before we ever hope to influence the mind. Now, let me tell you something else. The deepest principle in human nature is the craving to be appreciated, not flattered, not manipulated. Appreciated genuinely, honestly, sincerely. You want to win people over? Start by giving honest and heartfelt appreciation. Not once, not when it's easy, but as a daily practice. Because when we appreciate others, we awaken the best in them. And when we criticize, we often pull out the worst. So tomorrow, when the urge comes to reprimand, to criticize, to correct, pause. Think of Lincoln sitting at his desk, putting aside the letter he knew would hurt more than heal. Think of Twain letting his wife keep the angry letters out of the mail. Think of Confucius reminding us to clean our own doorstep before judging our neighbors. Start with yourself. Lead by example. Show appreciation. And you'll be amazed how the people around you begin to change, not because they were forced to, but because they wanted to. I once met a man in a small town in Missouri who reminded me of this principle more clearly than any book, lecture, or famous quote ever could. He wasn't famous. He didn't hold degrees or have a corner office. In fact, he worked as a janitor at the local school, but there was something in the way he moved, the way he smiled at the children, the way he took time to listen to teachers, let teachers vent, and even students complain. His name was Mr. Thomas, and he taught more lessons with a mop in his hand than most people do with a microphone. I remember one day a young boy, 10 or 11 I'd guess, accidentally spilled an entire carton of milk in the cafeteria. The noise it made, the way it splashed across the floor, the horrified look on the boy's face. It had every eye in the room watching. A teacher snapped, "How many times have we told you to be careful? You need to grow up." The boy's lips trembled. He bent to start cleaning, and that's when Mr. Thomas arrived, quietly, swiftly, as he always did. But instead of fussing or frowning, he gently put a hand on the boy's shoulder and said, "You know, I once knocked over a whole tray of mashed potatoes in the kitchen. Burned my foot, too. Took me days to get the smell out of my shoes." The boy looked up at him in surprise. Then he smiled, and in that one smile you could see that shame had turned into relief. Mr. Thomas winked and added, "Spills happen. That's how we learn to walk steady." Later I asked him why he always took things like that with such grace. He shrugged and said, "People don't grow from punishment. They grow from understanding. I've made enough mistakes in my life to know that being yelled at never helped me fix them, but being treated like I mattered, that did." That was years ago, and Mr. Thomas has long since retired. But I think of him every time I feel the urge to snap at someone for not doing what I think they should have done. I think of him when I'm about to speak too quickly, judge too harshly, or correct too proudly, and I try to pause, to breathe, to imagine the world from the other person's eyes. That is the heart of this first principle. Anyone can criticize, anyone can condemn, anyone can complain, but it takes wisdom to understand, it takes patience to listen, and it takes courage, real courage, to lift someone up when the easier choice would be to tear them down. So let's try, you and I, to be more like Lincoln, more like Franklin, more like Mr. Thomas. The world already has enough sharp tongues and quick judgments. What it needs, what it's aching for, is a little more kindness, a little more curiosity, a little more of that quiet strength that chooses empathy over ego. Let us begin there. Principle 1, don't criticize, condemn, or complain. Instead, try to understand. So the next time you're tempted to correct someone harshly, to pass judgment, or to voice your frustration, pause. Remember that everyone is carrying a story you cannot see, a burden you cannot measure, a fear, a hope, a lesson still being learned. Choose instead to understand, to ask, not accuse, to support, not shame. In doing so, you won't just change their day, you might change their life, and you'll certainly change yours. Because the most powerful influence you have is not in your words, but in your example. Let's lead with patience. Let's speak with compassion. Let's be the kind of people who leave others better than we found them. That's where real influence begins. That's how connection grows. And that's why the first and perhaps most important principle of all is, don't criticize, condemn, or complain. Instead, be the reason someone feels understood today. Now let me share with you a truth that has stood the test of time. The big secret of dealing with people. There is only one way under high heaven to get anyone to do anything. Have you ever stopped to think about that? Yes, only one way, and that way is by making the other person want to do it. It's a simple truth, but it's the only truth that works. Let me explain. Now, of course, you could use force. You could stick a revolver in someone's ribs, threaten them, or use fear to gain their cooperation. But we all know that such methods lead to consequences far worse than we can imagine: resentment, rebellion, and pain. No, there is a better way. The only way to get someone to do anything is by giving them what they truly desire. But what is it that they want? What drives every human being? Let's dive into this idea, for understanding it unlocks the greatest secret in human relationships. Sigmund Freud, the famous psychologist, said that everything we do springs from two deep desires: the sex urge and the desire to be great. And while these motives certainly have their place, another great thinker, John Dewey, described the deepest human urge in a slightly different way: the desire to be important. Let that sink in. The desire to be important. It is this craving that drives so much of our behavior, and not just in little ways, but in profound ways. Consider the things most people want: health and the preservation of life, food to sustain them, rest and the comfort of sleep, money and the power it brings, a sense of well-being and fulfillment. But above all these, there is one longing that rarely gets fulfilled: the desire to feel important. This longing for significance, for recognition, is one of the most powerful forces in human nature, and it is often left unsatisfied, which is why so many people strive for it in unhealthy ways. Abraham Lincoln, for instance, was once a poor grocery clerk, yet what drove him to become one of the greatest leaders of all time? It was his deep desire to matter, to leave a legacy. It was the same for Charles Dickens, for Sir Christopher Wren, for Rockefeller, and it is the same for you and me. We all have a desire for importance. It's woven into the fabric of our souls. It's why we seek admiration, why we wear our best clothes, why we boast about our children. It's why some people go to great lengths to create an image of themselves that reflects their worth. But here's the truth, my friends. It's not about what you have, but about how you make others feel. If you want to get people on your side, if you want them to cooperate, it's simple. Make them feel important. This is the key to winning hearts and minds. Let's look at an example. When I was a farm boy in Missouri, my father raised prized hogs and cattle. We would win blue ribbons at the county fairs, and he would proudly display them to guests. But you know what? The hogs didn't care about the ribbons. They didn't feel any sense of importance from them, but my father did. That ribbon, that recognition, made him feel significant. It gave him a sense of accomplishment and worth. And so it is with all of us. When we are recognized, when we feel important, we are motivated to do things we might otherwise resist. This desire, this need for recognition is part of what makes us human. And here's something else to consider. This urge for importance is not only what drives great leaders and successful entrepreneurs, it's also what leads to misfortune. Take the case of the criminal. Many young criminals are driven by the desire for attention, for respect, for admiration. They might rob a bank or join a gang just to feel like they matter, just to satisfy that hunger inside them for recognition. But how we satisfy that need makes all the difference. The question I want to leave you with is, how do you get your sense of importance? Are you like Rockefeller, who gave to others and built hospitals for the poor? Or are you like Dillinger, who sought importance through fear and violence? The choice is yours. In fact, when you give people sincere appreciation, when you make them feel valued, you'll witness something truly remarkable. You'll see them blossom, and you'll build connections that transcend mere transactions. Remember, as William James, the great philosopher, said, the deepest principle in human nature is the craving to be appreciated. This, my friends, is the key to unlocking the best in people. It's the secret of building relationships, of gaining cooperation, of winning influence. If we can satisfy this deep hunger for recognition in others, we can achieve more than we ever dreamed possible. And now let us continue to explore how you can apply this principle in your life. I consider my ability to arouse enthusiasm among my people, Schwab explained. The greatest asset I possess and the way to develop the best in a person is by appreciation and encouragement. Schwab continued, there is nothing else that so kills the ambitions of a person as criticisms from superiors. I never criticize anyone. I believe in giving a person incentive to work, so I am anxious to praise but loath to find fault. If I like anything, I am hearty in my approbation and lavish in my praise. This, he said, was his secret. But what about the average person? They tend to do the exact opposite. If they don't like something, they criticize. But if they do like something, they stay silent. That's why you'll often hear, once I did bad and that I heard ever, twice I did good but that I heard never. In all my wide association in life, meeting with many great people in various parts of the world, Schwab added, I have yet to find anyone, no matter how exalted their station, who did better work and put forth greater effort under a spirit of criticism than they would ever do under a spirit of approval. Schwab's example is a testament to the power of appreciation, a quality that also helped Andrew Carnegie rise to prominence. Carnegie praised his associates publicly and privately. In fact, he wanted to immortalize his appreciation by leaving an epitaph on his tombstone that read, "Here lies one who knew how to get around him men who were cleverer than himself." Sincere appreciation was also a key component of John D. Rockefeller's success. When one of his partners, Edward T. Bedford, lost $1 million, instead of criticizing him, Rockefeller congratulated him for saving 60% of the investment. "That's splendid," said Rockefeller. "We don't always do as well as that upstairs." This kind of thoughtful acknowledgement can be seen everywhere, even in everyday life. A story that may not have happened, but still illustrates the point, involves a farm woman who served her family a heaping pile of hay. When they asked why she did it, she responded, "How did I know you'd notice? I've been cooking for you for the last 20 years, and in all that time, I ain't heard a word to let me know you weren't just eating hay." A study once found that the main reason wives ran away was lack of appreciation. This applies to husbands too. and it's all too easy to take loved ones for granted without expressing how much they mean to us. One story shared in a class illustrated this. A husband, after his wife requested that he list 6 things she could improve to be a better wife, surprised her by sending 6 red roses with a note saying, "I can't think of 6 things I would like to change about you. I love you the way you are." His simple gesture made an enormous impact on her, and it wasn't long before others noticed and commented on his considerate act. Florenz Ziegfeld, a renowned producer, built his reputation by glorifying women, particularly the chorus girls, in his Broadway shows. He raised their wages, treated them with dignity, and filled their lives with appreciation, knowing that it would make them perform better and feel more beautiful. But what about the rest of us? We nourish the bodies of our children and employees with food, but how often do we nourish their self-esteem? Alfred Lunt, a great actor, said, "There is nothing I need so much as nourishment for my self-esteem." We often forget that kind words of appreciation can nourish the soul, just as food nourishes the body. There is a poignant story about Stevie Morris, later known as Stevie Wonder, whose life changed when a teacher showed appreciation for his remarkable hearing. It was this acknowledgement of his unique gift that helped Stevie realize his potential and become a legendary musician. Now, some may think this is all just flattery and insincere praise, but there's a difference between flattery and genuine appreciation. Flattery is shallow and selfish, while true appreciation is heartfelt and unselfish. As Ralph Waldo Emerson wisely said, "Use what language you will, you can never say anything but what you are." Flattery, as Benjamin Disraeli showed with Queen Victoria, may work on some, but it's not sustainable. True appreciation, however, comes from the heart, and it's that sincerity that will leave a lasting impact. Let's focus on the good in others. When we stop thinking about ourselves and start thinking about what others are doing right, we won't need to resort to flattery. True appreciation speaks volumes, and it's one of the most powerful tools in human relationships. One of the most neglected virtues in our daily lives is appreciation. Somehow, we often overlook praising our children when they bring home a good report card, or encouraging them when they first succeed in something like baking a cake or building a birdhouse. What many of us don't realize is that nothing pleases our children more than this kind of parental interest and approval. It means the world to them, and it builds their self-esteem and motivation. Think about it. The next time you enjoy a perfectly cooked filet mignon at the club, why not send a note to the chef telling them how excellently it was prepared? When a tired salesperson shows you unusual courtesy, mention it to them. A simple acknowledgement goes a long way. Every minister, lecturer, and public speaker knows the discouragement of giving their best, pouring themselves out to an audience, and not receiving even a single word of appreciation. This principle doesn't apply only to professionals. It applies to workers in offices, shops, factories, and even in our own families and friendship. We all crave appreciation. It's the currency that sustains us. In our daily interactions, we should never forget that every person we meet is human and has a deep need for appreciation. Imagine leaving a friendly trail of gratitude wherever you go. You might be surprised by how these small sparks of kindness create flames of friendship. The next time you visit, those sparks will shine bright, lighting the path for connection and goodwill. Pamela Dunham from New Fairfield, Connecticut, had a janitor under her supervision who was doing a poor job. The other employees mocked him and deliberately made his job harder by littering the hallways. This behavior was causing a loss in productive time. Pamela tried different ways to motivate him, but nothing seemed to work. One day she noticed that he did something particularly well. She made sure to praise him in front of others. Over time, he started to do better work, and before long, he was performing efficiently and with pride. His transformation didn't come from criticism or ridicule, and it came from honest appreciation. In the end, it was encouragement that turned his performance around. It's a powerful reminder. Hurting people doesn't change them, and it's rarely warranted. I have an old saying pasted on my mirror, one that I see every day. I shall pass this way but once. Any good, therefore, that I can do, or any kindness that I can show to any human being, let me do it now. Let me not defer nor neglect it, for I shall not pass this way again. As Emerson said, every man I meet is my superior in some way, and that I learn of him. If this was true for Emerson, isn't it likely to be 1,000 times more true for you and me? Let's stop focusing on our own accomplishments, desires, and worries. Instead, let's take the time to notice the good in others. And when we do, let's not indulge in cheap flattery, but give honest and sincere appreciation. Be generous with your praise. When you do, people will cherish your words, treasure them, and carry them with them for years to come, long after you've forgotten them. This is principle number 2. Give honest and sincere appreciation. When we do, we create an environment where people feel valued, and that positive energy returns to us in ways we never imagined. If this message resonated with you, even just a little, take a second to like the video. And if you're on a journey to grow, lead with empathy and become the best version of yourself, hit that subscribe button and join our community. We've got more inspiring stories, practical wisdom, and real talk coming your way. Remember, change starts with understanding, and it starts with you.